You know what time it is. I know some people are gonna see this first. I'm not doing the voices. Well, I am gonna do the voices. I'm just gonna not take the time out of my day. Jeez. To voice it over. I'll just read it straight up. Alright, ready? Let's see. We're off. Voron's voices were failing. Where is she? He snarled. Where is... Before he could finish, Lady Voron stepped out from the rear. The sight of her brought immediate desperate hope to the Boros lines, cloak trailing behind her, eyes cold and resolute. She raised one hand as a crimson aura ignited around her. Her power surged outwards. The air thickened. Pebbles floated from the ground, and then she unleashed. A beam of destructive crimson force aimed straight the Lumen command ridge. If struck, the entire Lumen leadership would be obliterated. But Queen Erlyn was ready. 7 mystics raised their mirrored shields in perfect synchronization. The beam hit the mirrored surface and bent, refracted, and redirected. The redirected blast slammed into the Boros' 4th Battalion, vaporizing a swath of soldiers in an instant. When the dust settled, half of the battalion was gone. Lady Voron's eyes widened. They're using mirrored runes, she whispered. They're prepared for me. For the first time in years, uncertainty cracked her voice. Voron stared at her. Can you break them? She hesitated. I don't know. The battlefield froze at those words, sensing hesitation. King Vertun lifted his sword. Advance. The Lumen army surged, unstoppable. Archers rained down radiant volleys, mages blasted through weakened formations. Sun Lance riders swept from the flanks, driving the Boros survivors toward the canyon walls. The 5th Boros Battalion attempted a last charge, only for a wall of conjured stone to rise in front of them, halting their momentum. Lumen infantry cut them down before they could reorganize. In desperation, Lady Voron summoned another devastating surge, stronger, wilder, uncontrollable. The ground shook. Her aura crackled like living lightning. But before she could release it, an anti-aether mine, hidden beneath her feet, detonated with a blinding force. The explosion hurled her backward into a canyon wall, cracking sickeningly. Blood streamed down her temple. Her power flickered. The Calamity had been wounded. Boros' morale was shattered with her. By late afternoon, the slaughter was complete. The canyon floor was littered with broken armor, shattered banners, and the bodies of thousands. The survivors ran in scattered groups, tripping over rubble and fallen comrades, chased by Lumen riders who pushed them deeper into retreat. Lord Voron stood amidst the wreckage of his elite guard, sword dragging uselessly in the dust. His breath shallow, his eyes burned with helpless, impotent rage. Queen Erlyn stepped to the edge of the ridge, voice carrying across the canyon. Your move, Lord Voron. But he had one left. Lady Voron staggered to her feet beside him, wiping blood from her jaw. Her energy flared weakly and unstable. We can still fight, she whispered. Though even she didn't believe it, Lord Voron placed a hand on her shoulder, speaking no. He said quietly, hollowly, we can't. Below them, the battlefield glowed with the light of Lumen victory. The Boros Empire's strongest opening blow had been shattered. The war had just begun. That's the end of chapter 1, I'll start the first half of chapter 2. Chapter 2, The Shattering Line. Chess setting the board. With me! The sun had not climbed yet fully over the horizon, but the battlefield was already painted in colors of ruin. Smoke drifted in thick ribbons across the plain, carrying the stench of steel and burning cloth. The remains of Boros's western battalions lay scattered in broken formations, their banners half buried in the mud and trampled in earth. What had begun as a calculated stand at dawn had collapsed into a desperate fight for survival by midday. Every soldier still breathing knew the truth they dared not to speak. The war was slipping inch by inch, corpse by corpse. The word of the Lumen Empire continued and advanced, rippled through the ranks like a cold wind. The commanders were ghosts, silent, precise, and maddeningly patient. No matter how fiercely Boros's men fought, the enemy never approached recklessly. They maneuvered as though they could see the future, sliding like blades between Boros's weakness and carving out pieces of the army with surgical intent. What dig? I lost my place. The young and old alike felt a suffocating dread take hold. The momentum and that Boros's soldiers once boasted had become a memory washed away by Lumen's relentless, calibrated pressure. Yet even with the suffocating despair, the fighting did not stop. Boros's officers shouted orders that were half buried beneath the thunder of marching feet and the clash of steel. Those trained irregular tactics, terror assaults, and brute shock were dispatched to stem the tide. They hurled themselves into the Lumen choke points, attempting to break just one of the advancing wedges. For a moment, their fury tore through the enemy lines, and hope flickered in the eyes of the weary. But every breakthrough was met with an immediate and crushing response. Once Lumen identified a threat, they erased it with a chilling discipline. Still, a few victories stood out like dying stars in the blackness. The heaviest strikes came when word spread that one of Lumen's siege artifact bearers, a towering armored brute who carried a scythe of ionized steel, had been sighted advancing toward Boros's center line. The creature had already taken apart a vanguard unit. Shields split as easily as fruit. Even the bravest warriors faltered, convinced that the thing was unstoppable. The sky itself seemed to dim as it approached, but then Boros answered in kind. Kyler and Elijah. A name and a horse spurned into Boros's history for generations, though at the time no one realized the significance of the moment. Kyler rode out like a shard of lightning, Elijah's hooves striking sparks from the shattered earth. The pair moved with fluid grace, weaving through the fractured formations with impossible speed. Every soldier they passed felt like a surge of hope, as though weight on their chest had lightened. Kyler was not a man of theatrics or pomp. He simply embodied what a Boros knight should be. Unyielding, selfless, and frighteningly skilled. The siege bearer recognized the worthy challenger and twisted its scythe in anticipation, but Kyler did not slow. Elijah reared, striking the weapon aside with a sound like thunder. Kyler plunged forward, blade shining with white smoke. The impact echoed through the surrounding field, stunning even the Lumen vanguard. A single exchange was all it took. Kyler's blade drove through the armor thicker than an engine plate, cutting straight into its core. The giant, once mighty and renowned, fell, the ground trembling beneath its collapse. Cheers rang out across Boros' lines, ragged but powerful. For a breath, the despair was lifted. Kyler did not bask in the victory. He wheeled Elijah around, charged straight into the press of the enemy infantry, carving through dozens before the Lumen commanders reacted, and his unit followed behind, emboldened. That's half of chapter 2. Yeah, it's half of chapter 2. Bye.